Hi, boys and girls. Today we are going to be estimating answers to division problems. And before we can begin doing that, we need to make sure we have some important vocabulary straight. So the answer to a division problem is called a quotient. Okay, that's a quotient. So I'm going to be using that term instead of answer, quotient. The number that we're starting with, this represents the whole. This is called the dividend. The dividend represents the whole, and the divisor tells us how many parts we're going to have, how many sections we're making, how we're dividing it up, okay? So we have the dividend represents the whole. In a division sentence, it's the first number. The divisor tells us how many parts we're dividing it into or creating, breaking it up into, and the quotient is our answer. So I'm going to rewrite the problem down here just so I can leave the vocabulary up. And as you can see, we're estimating. So here's what we're going to do. When we estimate quotients, we always start by rounding the divisor first. It's much easier if we round the divisor first. So let's change the 19 into 20. Now I need to change the 402 into something that I know is going to be a multiple of 20. So I'm going to actually look at the 2, and I'm going to look at the 4. Well, I know that 4 is a multiple of 2. I can count by 2s and get to 4s. So I can know that I can change this 402 into 400. And now I have 400 divided by 20. And what we learned last time is we can divide both sides by 10. Okay, so if I divide both sides by 10, this becomes 2. This becomes 40. What I'm really doing is crossing off the zeros from both sides. If I divide both sides by 10, and now I have 40 divided by 2, or 2 times what is 40? Remember, we can use the inverse operation of multiplication. 2 times what is 40? Well, 2 times 20 is 40, so 40 divided by 2 is 20, which means that our estimate for 402 divided by 19 is going to be around 20. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Let's take a look at this problem of 293 divided by 42 is around what? I'll always start by changing the divisor first. And remember, the divisor is how many parts we're creating. So I'm going to change 42 into 40. Then I have to think of my fours tables. What's going to be close to 29? Well, I can use my multiplication chart if I'm using that. And I can go down my fours until I get close to 29. And look at that. I go 28. 4 times 7 is 28. 4 times 8 is 32. That's too much. So 4 times 7 is 28. So I'm going to change 293 into 280. The goal here is to look for a basic math fact. The first number we're always going to change to something really easy to work with. The second number we've got to think about math facts. And that's where it's a little bit different than what we did with multiplication last time. So now I'm going to divide both sides by 10, and I have 28 divided by 4. Or what is 4, if I want to use the inverse, 4 times what is equal to 28? Well, 4 times 7 is 28. So that means the estimate of 293 divided by 42 is approximately 7. Okay. Let's take a look at another one. Okay. And I'll slow it down. I'll make sure that you understand the steps. So let's say we have 8,095 divided by 23. And we're trying to find our estimated quotient. Start by changing the divisor first. Okay, so 23 is going to change into 20. Now I need to think of a basic math fact. 20 times what might get me close to 8,000? Well, I think 2, and I see an 8. So I could actually just change this one right to 8,000. Okay, I'm going to change it to 8,000. Again, 2 times what can get me something here. So now I'm going to divide. I can only divide this side by 10, which means I can only divide this side by 10. It has to be exactly the same. I divide both sides by 10. I divide both sides by 100, okay? But I can only divide both sides by 10 because this only has one zero. So now I'm left with 800 divided by 2 is equal to what? Or if I wanted to use the inverse of multiplication, 2 times what is equal to 800? Well, I know 2 times 4 gives me 8, and then I have 2 zeros. So 2 times 400 is 800. So my estimate of the quotient for 8,095 divided by 23 is 400. All right. Let's take a look at another one. Okay. So let's say I have 2,691 divided by 48. Okay. It's approximately what? So I want to change 48 first. Always change the divisor first. So I can go to 50. Okay. Now I have to change this into something. So I think about my fives. 2 and the 5 doesn't help. So I'm going to look at the 2 and, sorry, I'm getting another marker. I'm going to look at the 2 and the 6 to see if that helps me. Well, and then, so now I have 26. And I think 5, can 5 get to 26? Well, 5 can't get exactly to 26, but I know that 5 times 5 is 25. So I'm going to get a 25 in here, and then I'm going to change both of these numbers to 0. And now I have 2,500 divided by 50 is equal to what? So I look here, what's the fewest number of zeros I have? I've got 1 0 in the 50. So I'm going to cross off 1 0 from both sides. And I'm left with 250 divided by 5, or 5 times what is 250? Well, I know 5 times 5 is 25, and then I have a 0. So 5 times 50 is 250. So my estimated quotient is going to be 50. Okay, let's do one more. Okay, and then I'm going to write down the steps for you so you'll be able to kind of freeze the video to follow the steps if you need to. Let's say I had 481 divided by 68. Okay, I'm going to change 68 first. Always change the divisor first. So 68 is going to become 70. Now I'm looking at the 7. The 4 is not going to help me. So I'm going to look at the 48. And I think about my sevens tables. And if you don't know your sevens, use your multiplication chart. Okay, how can I get close to 48? I can go over a little bit, I can go under a little bit, but I want to get close to 48. So if I look at my multiplication chart, I have a 42 and I have a 49. 7 times 7 is 49, 7 times 6 is 42. So I'm going to use 49 because that's closer to 48. So I'm going to change 400 for the 48 into 49. So 481 is going to round to 490. And now my basic math fact here is 49 divided by 7. Okay, or 7 times what is 49? But first, look what I can do. I can divide by 10 there. I can divide by 10 here. And all I'm left with is my basic fact. 49 divided by 7, or 7 times what is equal to 49. And 7 times 7 is 49. So 481 divided by 68 is going to be around 7. So let me just write down the steps for you of what you do when you're doing this, okay? And then you can freeze the video and write them down or if you need to. So the first thing I'm going to do is I round the divisor. Okay, I round the divisor. Then what I do is I look for a basic fact between the divisor and the dividend. Okay, I look for a basic fact between the divisor and the dividend. Third thing I do is I round the dividend to the basic fact. Okay. The fourth thing I do is what I'm really doing is I'm dividing by powers of 10, which is crossing off zeros. The same number of zeros from both sides. That's super important. You have to cross off the same number of zeros from both sides. Okay. And lastly, I divide, or I can multiply. Oops, sorry. I can multiply to solve. Okay, so the steps again, I round the divisor. That's the divisor. Then I look for a basic fact. So here this became 20, so that became 400. Looking for a basic fact relationship between the divisor and the dividend. Then I round the dividend. So this became 400 because that was 20. Then I was able to cross off the zeros because I divided both sides by 10. And then I divided or I multiplied. All right. Feel free to watch this video or even pause this, watch this video again. You can pause this video and open up the problem set in another tab so you have the steps if you need them. All right. Good luck, boys and girls. Go ahead and do the problem set.